whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
I keep thinking your name is some new obscure Myers-Briggs type.
ENSO. So always light. Yes, I feel
Good evening. We are Team Enso, and this is the prototype presentation for the game Bobby's Journal. I'm Jonah, producer and physics programmer. Chan Moni-Sign, associate producer and tools programmer. Ben Henning, technical director, engine and graphics programmer. Robert Gervais, narrative designer, game writer, debug, audio, and gameplay programmer. Kelsey Storch-Toomey, art director. Ian Shores, audio director. Bernie Hansen, animator, content artist, and marketing artist. Heather Towns, background artist. Lucy Tibbetts, lead designer. And unfortunately, could not be here today is Phil Clausen, sound designer, and Nate Eifert, sound technician. Now we're going to hand it over to Lucy to talk about the high concept.
Thanks, Jonah. So just to refresh, our game is a narrative-based 2D side-scrolling platformer in which the player uses simple mechanics to traverse the narrative experience. In our demo, we're going to show you, it follows the tale of Bobby Zong and her dinosaur friend Darren. You'll see right there. As they adventure through the world of Bobby's dreams to retrieve the missing pieces of the journal. So as we reach the fork of the road here, you'll notice that Darren can't quite make that path yet, or make the jump to get that path, so he goes down to the cave, where we start to hear a fine example of being dynamic audio. So as he starts to move past the waterfall, we can start to hear an example of Ian's random battle music. So now that Ben has gathered enough pieces of the journal, you'll notice that Darren's jump is actually higher, allowing him to access the other path and experience a new part of the game. Just to note, the double jump is purely for demonstration purposes. That's about it. So I'm going to pass it off to Moni now to show you guys how the levels are created.
Thanks, Lucy. All right, so let's talk about editors. In our editor, if you can see, initial changes from our prototype was that we moved our editor from an in-game to an in-engine. Now our Enso engine editor remembers the actions of the user. Why do we do this? Well, if you remember every action and then serialize those actions into one file, boom, we have our level. Now this is important because judging on how far we serialize, we can do undo and redo. Now for our graphical choice here, we chose and tweakbar. Why did we choose and tweakbar? Well, you see, and tweakbar, as developers, we found was very easy to integrate into our engine, meaning faster iteration time for editors, more time in their editor, better editor overall. Okay.
And if you could bring the volume down just a little, just talk to us a little more normally, that'd be awesome.
Oh, sorry. As you see earlier, our prototype was built in our editor. Now, Ben, why don't you run easy for us, and let's take a look here. Let's load a level. All right, and you can see here the camera and the editor moves back and forth, also zooms in and out. Let's select, I don't know, platform. Let's move that up and down for us. We can also delete that, showing that we can modify that. And since we delete, why don't we respawn that? All right, I don't really like the size of that. Let's increase the size there, resizing, showing that we can change the size of our platform. On the left-hand side there, you can see that that's all the entities in our game. Also in the bottom corner there, it shows components for the entity that we choose, showing that we can do other things besides just platform modification. Let's delete some backgrounds. All right. And Ben, why don't you hit them with some tech updates?
Thank you, Moni. So from our changes from the tech, from engine proof to prototype, we've implemented a meta system. Prior to this, we didn't have any sort of reflection system or any sort of abstract introspection. So we introduced the ability to bind properties, which allows us to easily bind specific values of components to Lua. And our properties use full-type introspection. We also have automatic Lua binding. It still uses Lua Bridge, but we've added another layer of indirection, which allows a lot more flexibility, and it decreases the time to get stuff working in Lua. We've also implemented an art type system, allowing us to templatize both the creation of components and entities, which is used very heavily in the level editor right now. We've implemented a more robust high-level rendering system, which currently supports animations and sprites, Characters do support multiple animations each. We also support a multi-layer scene graph. Sprites are registered to specific layers, and they're drawn one on top of another. And depending on the size of the layer, it moves relative to the camera, allowing for parallaxing, as you saw in the prototype. We've also implemented a basic resource system so far. All it supports at the moment is just loading animations and sprites, but it also supports maintaining the root directory for asset loading, depending on if we're debug or release mode. We've implemented a simple game object model at the moment, which is really just a level system allowing us to load and say multiple levels in the level editor and load them in the engine. And we've made some simple core engine changes with how components are owned by entities, and we've also changed it so entities can be destroyed after a certain amount of time. I'm now going to hand it over to Jonah to talk about other system changes.
Thank you, Ben. For most of the system changes since engine proof, a lot of it has been in physics. We've got advanced debug draw now, so we can draw contact points, contact normals, and polygon normals to find those bugs and be able to destroy them as soon as possible. We also enhanced physics stability to get rid of that annoying jitter that always seems to pop up in engines. We also fixed a rotation bug that happened after the engine proof, so now we have full rotation working in-game. We also fixed many collision detection and collision resolution bugs, and we implemented sleeping and static rigid bodies. So until we get a full broad face in, we keep our game at a constant 60 frames as long as the level's small enough. For audio, we implemented dynamic audio. Now I'm going to hand it over to Lucy, who's going to talk about design.
Thanks, Jonah. So in the weeks just after engine proof, we run a couple playtest sessions using the prototype level you saw before, but with our engine proof build. Unfortunately, the feedback we received was quite varied due to some minor technical issues. Players got really disengaged just because the controls felt weird. But on the bright side, we did receive a lot of positive feedback on the overall atmosphere of the game as created by the visuals and the music. Moving forward from this milestone, we plan to resume playtesting twice a week for the remainder of the semester. This upcoming week, we'll be spent searching for any major issues with the tech and gathering general feedback on the feel of the mechanics, the art and the sound. The remaining weeks after that will be spent as a process of locating, addressing, and retesting specific issues we found in previous weeks. So, when it comes to actually creating levels for our game, we developed a basic pipeline for our design teams to follow. It starts off with me creating a rough design sketch, then transferring it onto graph paper to get the general dimensions right. After that, I pass that off to our amazing art team who create mock-ups of the visual design, which they hand off to Ian, so he and the sound team can start developing ambience. So here is a sketch of my level 1 that I made that is on graph paper and has red collision lines that the programmers can use. But I thought the design was really boring, so after going on a walk with some of my friends, I got really inspired and made a new sketch for the artists to use. So now I'm going to pass it off to Kelsey to talk about our art.
Thank you, Lucy. With the character design for Bobby, we wanted to rework the design to bring it back to the playful quality of Chance Mackay's original design. We also liked the illustrative quality of the concept designs. Working from Chance concepts, I reworked the designs, which can be seen on the right, and gave the new designs to Bernie for animation. For the prototype level, we took the level concept from engine proof and added visual detail to ensure the level felt fully fleshed out. Heather worked on adding trees throughout the background and adding detail to the cave portion of the level, and Bernie worked on adding detail to the waterfall feature in the cave. As Lucy mentioned the trail walk that inspired her design for level 1. So artists, programmers, and sound designers went on the same trail as Lucy and took numerous reference photos. Because of the success of this nature walk, informing our design process, we are planning on arranging future reference trips. This will also allow the level design to be as specific to Washington State as possible, which is a big influence for our game. We have also finalized the animation that includes Bobby and Darren together. These animations completed by Bernie will be used in the complete level. Now Ian will talk about sound design.
Thank you, Kelsey. So, for audio, we've implemented all of our first pass core mechanics sound effects, which means going forward in the first playable, sound designers will only need to edit their fmod project files or the sound files themselves, which effectively reduces our iteration time to 0. On a more exciting note, we've implemented our first adaptive audio event, the adaptive ambience that you heard earlier in the demo. This it changes based on 2 parameters, position and elevation, which makes it possible for what you saw earlier when the character moves into the cave. You stop hearing all of the randomly generated sounds from outside the cave, and you only hear the cave frogs in the wilderness. I've also composed our enemy battle music, which will be triggered when enemies are near. Now, what you heard earlier was just a linear looping sound file. But going forward, I'll be using Fmod's randomized music functionality to hopefully eliminate what I like to call the Skyrim syndrome. That's where the dragon comes and we hear the same song every time. And finally, on the same field trip that both Lucy and Kelsey mentioned, we brought some field recording equipment. And we got some really nice recordings. So we have references for what different sizes and shapes of spaces should feel like, as well as some actually really nice quality recordings that we can use in Engine itself. And this is something that our sound designers are really excited about, using actual reference material in-game. So now I'll hand it off to Jonah for a wrap.
Thank you, Ian. So for risk mitigation, one of the major ones we're going into is that some of our team members are really close to burning out. Seeing how midterms are right between two milestones, we're tired, we're hungry, we want rest. So to mitigate this risk, we're going to take a few days off of prototype just to re-energize and refuel. And if we actually have enough buffer time at the end of the semester, so if anybody else needs any additional time off, we're able to give that to them. Another great major risk is lack of design-specific feedback. And what I mean by this is that we're not sure if the narrative design is going to appeal to the playtesters as much as we want it to. So to mitigate this, we're going to continue playtesting. We're going to rework the design wherever necessary based upon playtester feedback. We're also going to set up a meeting with Ben Ellinger to go over the design with him and get his feedback as well. Another risk is that our editor is not particularly easy enough to use for our designers yet. To mitigate this, we're going to get some feedback from them. We're going to work with them, seeing what we can update, and so decreases the development time for them. Another mitigation for this is we've set up programming time with Ben, where each Monday, Lucy and Robert get together with Ben and Moni, and they learn how the level editor works, how the Lua scripts work, so that they can make the levels without having to pester the developers continuously, so they can do it all themselves. So going into the schedule, we want to start our CRs extremely early. We don't want to bolt them down to the last 2 weeks and possibly not hit some of them. For tech, we're going to some additional systems/optimizations that we're going to be able to, that we might need for our level editor. We're going to spend much time using developing our level editor for our designers. For design, we're going to continue playtesting, and we're going to work on gameplay development. For art, we're going to start creating our level 1 thumbnails, our initial cutscene thumbnails, and creating the menus and actually the art for level 1 by hopefully first playable. For sound, we're going to implement what Ian mentioned before, the randomization of the music in Fmod, then hopefully port it to our own engine, create some additional character sound effects. And then, and for the last 2 weeks, as you can see, we have 2 weeks of buffer, so in case we need them, we have that additional time for us. For self-evaluation, we believe we are at 84%. We are Team Enso. Thank you.
All right. So, I really like the technical presentation. I thought you guys showed all your different features, and looked like you have a lot of strong technology, and also just overall as a presentation, you guys did a fantastic job. Just like I love the reference photographs and the stuff you brought in there, and all the different disciplines were represented extremely well. For the engine stuff, I'll give you a +2. I mean, it seems like all the engine features are working. Stability's good, performance is okay. I really like the art that you guys have in there. And then the key element for you guys is the layering and the animation stuff was in there. So that's really good. For that, I'll give for the content pipeline, you can edit and load levels. Level has lots of features and capabilities. I guess I can't say it's fairly easy to use since you listed that as a risk. And then the scripting, I'll give you also the +1 for the scripting one, and an in-game property editor. My reaction, if I think about this from a technical standpoint, is still, if I was, so like I'm trying to think, like if I was involved technically on the team, like what was I thinking about? One thing I would look at is there's a really good YouTube video where the Ubisoft scene shows them how their Ubi engine works and how they built levels for the Rayman Legends and Rayman Origins. Their editor is fantastic, and they have a very different approach that allows very procedural, like where they can get something that looks really good, but they can stretch out the grading and they can move it. I don't know if it's feasible in the sense of the amount of work that might go into a system like that, but it is worth looking at, like how they approach, maybe gives you inspiration for where you might go. And that actually is the center of where my concern is. Your background was essentially one large hand-painted piece, correct?
Yeah.
And so the issue with that is as you prototype game logic, let's say you needed that thing to be slightly higher, slightly shorter, or like, oh, you need to shorten this one part. you have to be very careful because that would require repainting that whole section. So first of all, do consider having an orange box mode in your editor so you can prototype all levels, and don't let an artist waste time painting it till you're absolutely positive your mechanics are going to work for that stage. Then the artist can come in and paint the level and make it gorgeous. Or like I said, also investigate some of the stuff the Rayman game was doing, where you may be able to have a hybrid of, you can have your beautiful art, but you gotta you kind of tile it and bend it along a mesh. Like I said, for technical reasons that may not be feasible within the semester, but at least gives you an idea of the direction you can go. And so what I'm warning you is from a content standpoint, it's gonna be hard to have a lot of different levels if the levels have to be completely hand painted, and it inhibits rapid pace of the game designers for fast content turnaround and building very rich, detailed environments. So I didn't see a lot of pieces, like you could put your physics in, but you couldn't move the trees or the background because it was all stuck in place.
So on the gameplay, you're going to have enemies that you fight?
No, they are mostly obstacles in the environment.
So what was that part about combat and stuff, on the sound and things?
We go through it, it's with you. So I assumed that we had talked about birds. So these birds are the enemies that I speak of, but they act as obstacles. So narratively, they're enemies, but mechanically, they're obstacles.
So yeah, so what this comes down to is because of things like that, I'm not sure what your gameplay is. So, I mean, I move through the world and I collect pieces of the journal and that's it? Or am I solving a puzzle? Am I?
As you go through, it displays parts of the narrative. It's mostly about the pure platforming mechanics, so we actually have, in level 1, there are two main mechanics that you learn depending on which path you take. And you have to use these mechanics in different ways in order to overcome these different challenges in that path.
Such as?
For one, you have to use the sprinting option to dash over a pit of thorns. Or like you have a normal jump distance that you use, and then in order to make that larger leap over the pit of thorns, you have to use the dash. Or in the other path, when you
Essentially what I'm worried about here, I mean, it's not be resolved, so from a mechanical point of view, this game seems very limited, and I don't see how you're going to make the mechanics particularly compelling, other than just a thing you do as you go along. Now that doesn't have to be more than that. If you are heavily relying on the narrative aspects of it, do all that. Oh yeah, sure. I mean, you can get away with super light mechanics, but then you got to sell that narrative part really well. And so I just have some confusion about how the experience actually comes out and feels to the player, and whether some of the, I mean, just look at a game like Ducks. Dallas has platforming, see? It's a platformer. I mean, this isn't what it's there for. No, it's a walk through the forest where you bring things back to life, right? I mean, it's a platformer without obstacles. And so things like that you can do, but I'm still confused exactly where you're at, what's the core of your gameplay, and how all that goes together. You don't need to explain that to me right now, but that's the biggest thing I worry about. Now, on top of that, you got gorgeous art. And so that's a, I'm not worried in one sense. You're going to be able to make something cool out of this. One way or another. I'm just a little confused about exactly how it's going to go and where the direction you hit for it. I would say on the looking at art walks, that kind of stuff, there's, if I could just tell you 2 spots to go to, one more practical, one less so. One is Komodo Gardens. So if you've never been there, down by in South Seattle near the Boeing Museum of Flight, that's well worth going for looking at stuff. Very easy to get to. It's free. The other one is the northwest tip of the United States, out by Tatoosh Island. If you've never been there, you should be there. It would fit in so well with the aesthetic you're doing. There's nothing else quite like it, and so that's a little bit more of a drive. The northwest corner of Washington State, way out on the Olympics. Yeah, I mean it's the far northwest corner, way out on the tip. Tatoosh Island is actually the thing out there that you can see from that tip point. A little bit further, but fantastic. You can go there, and part of the reason why I think of that is if you're doing all that foresty stuff, you want that Washington feel. You got to have a point where you come to the cliff with like the sea stacks and stuff like that. So, and man, I feel platforming the sea stacks. Okay. But anyway, stuff like that. Very cool. I'm going to figure out what the numbers are here.
Okay. It's a presentation plus 1 rehearsed, plus 1 well-dressed and cohesive, realism plus 0, risks plus 0, plan plus 2, partly because you already have a bunch of it done, and partly because you are the first schedule I've seen that I believed. You had CRs in every single week from now until the end. The people who go, and in this week we'll do the CRs. I'm like, no, probably not. Okay, and then I have a ton of discretionaries. You want me to add them up? You can do the
2 minutes over.
7.
Plus 7. So
Yep.
Anything.
Oh no, minus 2, plus 5 total.
Well, that's a bit, minus 2 times.
Plus 7 minus 2 equals plus 5. Okay, discretionary, plus 1, great audio. Plus 1, great mood and feel. Plus 1, fantastic background and environmental art. Plus 1, great look. Plus 2, great editor. Plus 1, weekly meeting with Dev and Design just to work on the level editor. That's so smart. Minus 2, you seem unaware you don't have a game. That's my big one. I was just like, art, bam, audio, bam, look and feel, bam, engine, bam, game. It's a drawing. Like, and that's why for me, your top risk would be we don't have the game yet. So I would get your game in as soon as possible because you want to find out if it'll work. Because usually they don't work at first, no matter what the game is, you know, and you need time to mess with it and tweak with it and turn it into what you want. But I would just say, don't let it be on paper, get it in the game and start playing with it.
3 minutes over. And so, yeah, I give you, I mean, this may be unfair because it depends on where you're sitting and going, but the way it feels from the presentation, give you minus 2 because the format can't feel like it's in, it doesn't feel like it's being used. Well, but plus 1 on the, you know, it definitely at least gives a glimpse of how the game will work. And, I think well scoped with minor concerns. I mean, and all that, that's kind of worst case scenario. You may be much better off than that. But from the way I was getting from the presentation, so 89% overall, but really you may be better off than that. So that's how it came across for me.